So Ruby Rose finally fell. But what does this actually mean? Today we witnessed the absolute beating and breakdown of Ruby Rose. Our poor little rose petal has finally had enough and decided to give in to the ever after. At long last she would answer the tree's call and drink the tea. But why? And at what point did Ruby Rose finally accept that being who she is simply wasn't enough? We're all no stranger to Ruby Rose battling with her inner self, questioning everything that she's done so far. Especially in this volume, we've seen Ruby tear herself apart countless times, with episode 7 serving as her tipping point. Going into this episode, Ruby has some very heartfelt dialogue that I feel really sets the tone for the rest of this episode.
What I couldn't do. I can't do this. I could never do this.
That line right there tells me that Ruby believes that she's been lying to herself this entire time. All of those instances of Ruby smiling on, thinking that she can do it, that she can be this leader, that she can form a good enough plan to beat Salem and save the day, that she can finally find answers to her mother, no longer holds true for her. One more thing about this scene, something that I think was done really well and that I didn't catch on my first watch.
I promised to serve Atlas as a huntress, that I'd keep people safe.
Did you? Did you notice anything about this scene? Particularly in the way that it was shot? Ruby's silver eyes weren't being shown. The silver light that's supposed to guide us to victory is no longer here. Ruby Rose in this moment hasn't given up on herself. She's simply given up on guiding others to victory. Let's move on to the mansion. No, not that mansion. This mansion. This is without a doubt one of my favorite moments in all of RWBY. Not just because we get to see our beloved characters return, but the entire premise of this mansion being a construct of Neo's semblance and how she perceives things. It's a way we get to see Neo's perspective and understand her thoughts in the story without it specifically being told to us. I love it. The entire scene is very theatrical with its lights and zooming shots and the dramatic effects, and especially when we get our first glimpse of the table and its attendants. It's all of RWBY's fears put into one place. She was shocked, of course, but she still had her head up high, because at this point, she still believed that this was all just Neo. RWBY at this point was still able to keep a leveled head. Sure, she was angry at the situation, but she still didn't let Neo get to her. At least, not yet. We all knew this was coming. What truly started to break down Ruby Rose was Penny. Look at Ruby's face when she sees Penny's weapons blocking her from Crescent Rose. Ruby in all her years would have never imagined Penny, her best friend, ever raising her weapon against her. Ruby no longer saw Neo, she saw Penny, and it truly shook her resolve when Penny began speaking out to Ruby. This whole time, Ruby has been fighting the thoughts in her head. Yet, when it's said by someone you really care about, especially in Ruby's case, it's too much to handle. We can never speak with the dead. No amount of guilt or sorrow you may feel will ever bring them back. So any thoughts you play out in your head are simply your own. But when they're brought out in the open, when your ears are physically hearing these words, it's venom. All that time spent saying it's okay, saying that it'll get better, is simply washed away. And that's exactly what happened here. We see Ruby's eyes go puffy and big, and then she's immediately pulled away by Torchwick and then gets attacked by Pyrrha. And what follows next is one of the best line deliveries by Lindsay Jones.
I'm trying to save everyone.
There's so much emotion in her voice. You get a sense of desperation as Ruby is on her last ditch effort to try and justify her actions to her own self, telling herself that she's trying her best. But before she can even finish her thoughts, she's stopped by Ironwood as he yells at her. Does Ruby Rose hold the blame for what happened to Atlas? Yes. Does Ruby Rose hold all the blame? No. It was her plan that helped drive the events of the fall of Atlas. Would Salem have won regardless if Ruby cooperated with Ironwood? That's up for debate. Either which way, thousands would have died regardless of what anyone did. Salem brought the largest Grimm army known to man to Atlas, and people expect there to be no casualties? Yeah, okay. Once more, Lindsay Jones delivers such a phenomenal line delivery here. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I really love her voice acting for Ruby here.
Not my
How many more
It feels so raw yet emotional. She really gets it across to us that Ruby is backed into a corner, both physically and mentally. Now the next scene is the one that I find most horrifying. Who put Ruby in this situation? Who inspired Ruby to be this amazing leader and guide her team forward? Ozpin. Looking back at Volume 1, it was Ozpin who appointed RWBY as team leader. It was Ozpin who gave RWBY a pep talk when Weiss was mad about RWBY becoming leader. It was Ozpin who accepted her early into Beacon. It was Ozpin who saw RWBY's potential. And now, it's Ozpin that's telling her that she's not good enough. It's Ozpin telling her that she's failing and that she can't be a huntress. The same person who brought her up is now beating her dry and telling her that she's not good enough. That just mentally messes you up. And the scene is made even more terrifying with the crunching sound effects of RWBY's bones being fractured as Ozpin just beats her with his cane. This scene just hurts. And to me, it mirrors RWBY and Roman's initial fight in Volume 3, with Roman beating her with his cane and giving her a reality check. But we all know that wasn't the end of it. RWBY had enough, and so she acted, doing anything she could to stop her torment. She grabbed her crescent rose and sliced at her aggressor. And what followed? Well, one of her worst fears, losing another one of her friends. Yet, this time, John didn't do it. Cinder didn't do it. She took the life of one of her own friends, and she couldn't handle it anymore. It was at this point that RWBY had accepted that her being her wasn't enough. I've said this before, but I'm very guilty of wanting RWBY to break this volume. But in no way was I ready for this. And I feel like the next 2 episodes are going to be even worse. Now, I really want to say that the cat played no part in RWBY wanting to drink the tea. I really want that decision to have been made solely by RWBY and not by the influence of an outsider. Keep the struggle between RWBY and herself. Like I said before, RWBY no longer saw Neo's illusions as illusions. She fully saw Penny, Pyrrha, and Ozpin, which makes this a huge blow for me and her. I grew up watching Ruby Rose. When she was happy, I was happy. When she was sad, I was sad. So now, I don't know what to feel. Yet one of the most hurtful moments was Ruby and Yang locking eyes as Ruby drinks the tea. I see it as Ruby saying, "I love you, sis, but now I'll be able to do better." That look that she gave Yang while her eyes were full of apathy was so hard to watch. And what's sad is, RWBY may not have even known that that was her real sister. Going through a traumatic situation like that can definitely leave your head clouded, especially when RWBY was already fighting internally. And now that RWBY's broken and no longer wants to be herself? I don't know, a part of me is broken. Tears aside, RWBY has officially fallen, so let's discuss all the information that we know about the tree. Number 1, the tree, at least for the after ends, isn't death. It's simply ascension. In simpler terms, for what we know, it's rebirth. Once you lose your purpose or can no longer serve it, the tree calls you back and you're given a new one. Number 2, the tree has a certain level of sentience to it, similar to Avatar's swamp, where it can sense and to a degree understand its residents and even interact with them in a way. Number 3, Alex and Lewis went to the tree, but the truth about their fate is still a mystery to us. We know the story of the Ever After got out to Remnant, but we're still in the dark about who actually wrote the tale. It's practically all speculation about what's going to happen in the remainder 2 episodes. I believe that the tree provides each person with their own domain within its roots, where they'll undergo the ascension process and make their own decision. An idea that I really like was actually brought up in my comments, where they believe that RWBY will be taken to the grave site of Summer Rose. And if that happens and we get to see Summer Rose trying to convince RWBY to either leave or stay, I'm going to lose my mind. It's no secret that I'm obsessed with Summer. I started watching RWBY because after I saw the first episode and I saw that white cloaked hooded figure, I immediately went, who is this person? I want to know more. And it's been about 10 years and I'm patiently waiting, so yeah. Regardless of what happens, I'm both excited and hurt at the direction that they've taken RWBY. Now, will this dip into Volume 10? I believe so. I really don't think they can wrap up this entire RWBY arc in 2 episodes. At the very least, I want RWBY to come out with her head up and her mind on the right track while going into Vacuole. But only time will tell. Unfortunately, it looks like RWBY's silver light has finally faded. And as of now, only a miracle can save us.